Hello there, friends. You know, I've been thinking about this conversation we need to have for quite some time now. At 80 years young, I've walked more miles than I care to count, stumbled more times than I'd like to admit, and learned some hard truths about what it really means to stay safe on our feet as we age. My name is Harold, and I've spent the better part of 4 decades as a health advisor, specializing in helping folks like us, the seasoned generation, navigate the challenges that come with getting older. But before I share what I've learned, let me ask you something that might surprise you. Did you know that 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls every year? That's not just a statistic to me. That's my neighbor Margaret, who broke her hip last spring. That's my brother-in-law Joe, who took a tumble in his kitchen and spent 3 weeks in the hospital. And yes, if I'm being completely honest, that was me too, about 6 years ago, when I caught my toe on an uneven sidewalk and went down hard enough to crack 2 ribs. That fall changed everything for me. Not because of the physical pain, though that was real enough, but because of what it represented. Here I was, a man who had spent decades advising others about health and wellness, and I had fallen victim to one of the most preventable injuries that affect our age group. The embarrassment was almost worse than the bruises, but you know what? It was also the best thing that could have happened to me, because it forced me to really dig deep into the science and practice of fall prevention. What I discovered over the next several years of research, working with physical therapists, studying the latest medical findings, and most importantly, testing everything on myself and with my clients, completely transformed not just how I walk, but how I think about walking. Today, I want to share with you 7 walking secrets that have kept me upright and confident for the past 6 years, and more importantly, have helped hundreds of my clients reclaim their independence and their joy in moving through the world. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Harold, I've been walking for 70 plus years. What could you possibly tell me that I don't already know? Well, that's exactly what my client Thomas said to me when he first came to see me 3 years ago. Thomas was 72, a retired engineer who prided himself on his logical approach to everything. He'd had 3 serious falls in 6 months, and his daughter was threatening to take away his car keys if he couldn't prove he could navigate safely on his own 2 feet. Thomas sat in my office with his arms crossed, clearly skeptical about what this old health advisor could teach him about something as basic as putting 1 foot in front of the other. But by the end of our first session, when I showed him how a simple change in where he looked while walking could improve his balance by 30%, his whole attitude shifted. Within a year of implementing all 7 of these secrets, Thomas went from 3 falls in 6 months to 0 falls. 0. And more than that, he got his confidence back. He started taking evening walks with his wife again, something he hadn't done in 2 years because he was afraid of falling in the dark. So let me share these 7 secrets with you, not as abstract concepts, but as real practical techniques that have been tested by real people facing real challenges. These aren't just theories from some medical textbook. They're battle-tested strategies that work. The first secret, the 3-point gaze. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Most of us, especially as we get older, develop what I call pavement paranoia. We start looking down constantly, watching every step, convinced that if we just stare hard enough at the ground, we'll avoid all the cracks and obstacles that might trip us up. I know I did this for years, especially after my fall. But here's the thing, looking down all the time is actually making us more likely to fall, not less. I learned this the hard way during my recovery period. I was so focused on avoiding another fall that I walked around like a person looking for lost change, head down, shoulders hunched forward. My physical therapist, a sharp young woman named Sarah, who had more wisdom about movement than people twice her age, finally called me out on it. "Harold," she said, "you're walking like you're 95, and you're creating exactly the posture that leads to falls." The 3-point gaze technique changed everything for me. Instead of staring at the ground right in front of my feet, I learned to keep my primary gaze focused on a point about 10 to 15 feet ahead, far enough to see what's coming, close enough to react appropriately. Then periodically I shift my gaze to the far point, what we call the horizon line, which helps maintain proper posture and prevents that forward lean that so many of us develop as we age. Finally, and this was the hardest part for me to master, I learned to trust my peripheral vision to handle the immediate surroundings. It took me about 3 weeks of conscious practice to retrain my walking gaze, but the difference was remarkable. My posture improved dramatically. My wife Martha commented that I looked 2 inches taller. My reaction time to obstacles actually got better, not worse, because I was seeing potential problems earlier rather than discovering them at the last second. And perhaps most importantly, I stopped walking with that fearful, hesitant gait that screams fall risk to anyone watching. The second secret, the heel-to-toe roll. Now this might seem incredibly basic, but I want you to think for a moment about how you actually walk. Don't change anything, just pay attention the next time you take a few steps. Are you landing heel first and rolling through your foot? Or are you doing what a surprising number of older adults do, landing flat-footed or even toe first? I discovered my own walking pattern was completely wrong about 5 years ago when I was working with a client named Dorothy, a retired dance teacher who at 78 moved with more grace than people half her age. I was demonstrating what I thought was proper walking form when she stopped me mid-stride. "Harold," she said with the gentle authority of someone who had spent 50 years teaching movement, "you're walking like you're wearing ski boots." She was right. Somewhere along the line, I had developed what's called a flat foot strike pattern. Instead of the natural heel-to-toe roll that we're designed for, I was essentially slapping my whole foot down with each step. This might not sound like a big deal, but it was actually creating multiple problems. Poor shock absorption, which was contributing to my knee pain, inefficient weight transfer, which was making me work harder than necessary, and reduced balance, because flat foot walking doesn't give you the smooth, controlled weight shift that helps maintain stability. The proper heel-to-toe roll technique involves 3 distinct phases, and once you master it, walking becomes smoother and more energy efficient than you might have experienced in years. First, you step with your heel, making initial contact with the ground. Then you roll along the outer edge of your foot. This is the part most people miss, allowing your weight to transfer smoothly from heel to midfoot. Finally, you push off with your toes, using them as a springboard for your next step. It sounds complicated when I describe it like this, but remember, this is actually how we walked naturally when we were younger. We just need to retrain our bodies to remember the pattern. I spent 2 weeks walking very slowly and deliberately, focusing on each phase of the roll. Martha thought I had lost my mind, watching me practice walking up and down our hallway like I was learning to walk for the first time. But the results spoke for themselves. Within a month, my knee pain had decreased significantly, and I found I could walk longer distances without getting tired. The third secret, core engagement. Here's something that might surprise you. The most important muscles for safe walking aren't in your legs. They're in your core. I know. Everyone talks about core strength these days, and it can start to sound like one of those fitness fads. But when it comes to fall prevention, core engagement isn't just helpful, it's absolutely critical. I learned this lesson during one of the most embarrassing moments of my advisory career. I was leading a walking group for seniors at the local community center, demonstrating proper techniques when I tripped over a small crack in the pavement. The stumble itself wasn't the embarrassing part. These things happen to everyone. What was embarrassing was how dramatically I lurched and flailed before catching myself. Several members of the group rushed over to make sure I was okay, and I realized that my dramatic recovery response was exactly what I had been teaching them not to do. That incident led me to really focus on core engagement during walking, and it's become perhaps the most valuable technique in my arsenal. The method I teach is called the zip-up technique, and it's surprisingly simple. As you walk, imagine you have an invisible zipper running from your pubic bone to your breastbone. Gently engage your abdominal muscles as if you're slowly pulling that zipper up, not tight enough to restrict your breathing, just enough to create a sense of stability and support around your midsection. When your core is properly engaged, several things happen automatically. First, your posture improves, which shifts your center of gravity to a more stable position. Second, the stress on your back, hips, and knees decreases significantly because your core muscles are doing their job of supporting and stabilizing your spine. Third, and this is the big one for fall prevention, your recovery time when you stumble improves dramatically. I tested this extensively after learning the technique. I would intentionally create small challenges for myself, walking on slightly uneven surfaces, navigating around obstacles, even practicing controlled stumbles in a safe environment. The difference in my recovery responses was night and day. Instead of the wild flailing and off-balance lurching that had characterized my previous stumble, I found I could make small, controlled adjustments that kept me upright and stable. The fourth secret, arm swing reset. This might be the secret that surprises you the most, because it's something that most of us never think about consciously. But the way you swing your arms while walking has an enormous impact on your stability and balance. And unfortunately, many of us develop arm swing patterns as we age that actually increase our fall risk rather than decrease it. I discovered my own problematic arm swing about 4 years ago during a consultation with a physical therapist who specialized in gait analysis. She had me walk across her office while she videotaped me from several angles, and when she played back the footage, I was shocked by what I saw. Instead of the natural, coordinated arm swing I thought I had, my arms were moving in a stiff, unnatural pattern. Sometimes I held them rigidly at my sides, sometimes I crossed them in front of my body. And when I did swing them, the movement was completely out of sync with my leg motion. "Harold," she said, pointing to the screen, "you're working against yourself with every step. Your arms should be helping you balance, but instead they're creating instability." She was absolutely right. I had unconsciously developed what she called protective arm positioning, holding my arms in ways that felt safer, but actually made me more likely to fall. The proper arm swing reset technique is beautifully simple and remarkably effective. Your arm should swing naturally in opposition to your legs. When your right foot steps forward, your left arm swings forward, and vice versa. Keep your elbows slightly bent, about 45 degrees, and let your arms swing in a front-to-back motion rather than across your body. The swing should be relaxed and natural, not forced or exaggerated. What amazed me most about mastering this technique was how much easier walking became. I hadn't realized how much extra energy I was expending with my inefficient arm patterns. Research shows that proper arm swing can reduce fall risk by up to 30%, and I believe it. More than that, it made me feel like I was walking with purpose and confidence again, rather than cautiously shuffling through my daily activities. The fifth secret, foot strength and proper footwear. Now I know what you're thinking. We're going to talk about shoes, right? Well, yes, but not in the way you might expect. Most conversations about footwear for older adults focus on what I call the safety shoe approach. Thick, cushioned soles, high ankle support, maximum stability features. And while there's a place for those types of shoes in certain situations, they're not always the best choice for developing the foot strength and ground awareness that actually prevent falls. I learned this lesson through my own experience with what I now call the Great Shoe Experiment. After my fall 6 years ago, I went out and bought the most supportive, cushioned walking shoes I could find. They felt like walking on marshmallows, and I convinced myself that all that padding and support was keeping me safe. But after about 6 months, I noticed something troubling. My balance seemed to be getting worse, not better, despite all my other efforts. The problem, as I learned from a podiatrist who specialized in aging foot health, was that my super supportive shoes were actually weakening my feet and reducing my proprioception. That's the technical term for your body's awareness of where it is in space. When your feet are encased in thick, cushioned soles, they can't feel the ground properly, and the small muscles in your feet that help with balance and stability start to weaken from Dutch use. The ideal walking shoe for fall prevention has 3 key characteristics: a low, wide heel for stability, a flexible, relatively thin sole that allows your feet to feel the ground, and secure fastening, either laces or Velcro, not slip-ons that can come off at the worst possible moment. I know this goes against conventional wisdom about supportive shoes for seniors, but the research is clear. Shoes that allow your feet to function naturally are safer than shoes that do all the work for them. But footwear is only half of this secret. The other half is foot strength, and this is where many of us have let things slide over the years. When was the last time you really thought about the strength and flexibility of your feet? If you're like most people my age, the answer is probably never. But your feet contain 26 bones, 33 joints, and more than 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. They're incredibly complex structures that need regular exercise to maintain their function. I've incorporated 3 simple foot exercises into my daily routine, and they've made a remarkable difference in my balance and stability. The first is toe spreading. Simply spreading your toes as wide as possible and holding for 10 seconds, then relaxing. This strengthens the small muscles between your toes and improves your foot's natural shock absorption. The second is towel gripping. Placing a small towel on the floor and using only your toes to scrunch it up and pull it towards you. This exercise strengthens your arch muscles and improves your ability to grip the ground while walking. The third is marble pickup. Scattered a few marbles on the floor and picking them up with your toes. This improves dexterity and coordination in your feet. These exercises might seem almost ridiculously simple, but I do them every morning while I'm having my coffee, and they've contributed significantly to my improved balance and confidence while walking. The sixth secret, widened base technique. This secret addresses one of the most common walking mistakes I see among older adults, and it's one that I was guilty of myself for years without realizing it. Many of us, especially as we become more concerned about balance and stability, unconsciously narrow our walking base. We start walking with our feet closer together, sometimes even crossing one foot slightly in front of the other, like we're walking on a tightrope. I discovered my own narrow-based walking pattern during a group session I was leading at the senior center. We were practicing walking techniques, and I had everyone walk in a straight line while I observed their gait patterns. When it was my turn to demonstrate, one of the participants, a retired nurse named Betty, pointed out that I was walking with my feet almost directly in line with each other. "Harold," she said, "you're walking like you're on a balance beam. That's not very stable, is it?" She was absolutely right, and her observation led me to research the biomechanics of walking base width. What I learned was fascinating and immediately applicable. When you walk with your feet too close together, you create what engineers call an unstable base of support. Imagine trying to balance a tall object on a narrow base versus a wide base. The wider base is always more stable. The widened base technique is simple but transformative. Instead of walking with your feet in a straight line, imagine you're walking on 2 parallel train tracks, with each foot following its own track. This creates a stable, rectangle base, rather than the unstable tightrope base that many of us unconsciously adopt. The width should be approximately hip-width apart, not so wide that you're waddling, but wide enough that you have a stable foundation with each step. This technique immediately reduces side-to-side sway and wobbling, which are major contributors to fall risk. I practiced this technique religiously for about a month, and the difference in my stability was remarkable. I felt more grounded and confident with every step, and the chronic ankle strain I had been experiencing from my narrow-based walking pattern completely disappeared. The seventh secret, mindful transitions. This final secret might be the most important one, because it addresses when most falls actually occur. If you ask most people when they think falls happen, they'll probably say, while walking. But the research tells a different story. The vast majority of falls happen during transitions. Standing up from a chair, turning around, stopping suddenly, moving through doorways, or switching from one type of surface to another. I learned this lesson firsthand during what I now call the bathroom incident about 3 years ago. I had gotten up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, something I'd done thousands of times before. But this time, in my sleepy haste, I stood up too quickly, turned toward the bathroom without pausing, and caught my foot on the bedroom rug. I didn't fall, thankfully, but it was close enough to shake me up and make me realize that I had been unconsciously rushing through transitions for years. The mindful transitions technique centers around what I call the 3-second pause. Whenever you're about to make a transition, standing up, turning around, stopping, changing direction, or moving from one surface to another, you pause for 3 full seconds. During those 3 seconds, you stop what you're doing, engage your core muscles, look ahead to where you're going, and then make your transition movement deliberately and with full attention. This might sound like it would make you move unbearably slowly through your daily activities, but the opposite is actually true. The 3-second pause prevents the stumbles and near falls that can turn a simple transition into a 5-minute recovery process. Research studies have shown that this single technique can reduce fall incidents by nearly 50%. I've been practicing mindful transitions for 3 years now, and it's become so automatic that I barely notice the pause anymore. But the increased confidence and safety it provides is immeasurable. I no longer worry about getting up from chairs, turning in tight spaces, or navigating changes in flooring surfaces. Bringing it all together, the system approach. Now, here's something crucial that I need you to understand. These 7 secrets work best when you use them together as a complete system, not as individual techniques. Each secret supports and reinforces the others, creating a comprehensive approach to safe, confident walking that's greater than the sum of its parts. Remember Thomas, the skeptical engineer I mentioned at the beginning? His transformation didn't happen because he mastered 1 or 2 of these techniques. It happened because he committed to implementing all 7 as an integrated system. The 3-point gaze improved his posture, which made the heel-to-toe roll more natural, which made core engagement easier, which allowed for better arm swing, which worked synergistically with his improved footwear and foot strength, which supported his widened base technique, which gave him the confidence to practice mindful transitions. Here's what's truly remarkable. The human brain has an incredible capacity for neuroplasticity, even at our age. That's a fancy term for the brain's ability to form new neural pathways and adapt to new patterns of movement. I've seen this firsthand with hundreds of clients over the years, and I've experienced it myself. Your brain can relearn safer walking patterns at any age. It's never too late to improve your gait, increase your stability, and reduce your fall risk. The real benefits beyond fall prevention. I want to close by talking about something that goes beyond the mechanics of walking in fall prevention. The biggest benefit of mastering these 7 secrets isn't just avoiding falls, though that's certainly important. The biggest benefit is regaining something that many of us lose as we age: confidence, stability, and joy in walking. I see this transformation regularly in my practice. Clients come to me walking with fear, hesitation, and that shuffling gait that speaks of uncertainty and vulnerability. They're afraid of falling, afraid of being seen as frail, afraid of losing their independence. But as they master these techniques and integrate them into their daily movement patterns, something beautiful happens. They start walking with purpose again, with confidence, with the kind of upright posture and smooth gait that communicates vitality and self-assurance. Martha, my wife of 52 years, put it perfectly about 6 months after I had fully integrated these techniques into my own walking. We were taking our evening walk around the neighborhood, something we had resumed after a 2-year hiatus following my fall. "Harold," she said, taking my arm, "you walk like yourself again." That's what I want for each of you, to walk like yourself again. Not like someone who's afraid of falling, not like someone who's given up on the joy of movement, but like the confident, capable person you are. These 7 secrets have given me back my confidence on my feet, and they've helped hundreds of my clients reclaim their independence and their joy in walking. They can do the same for you. It takes practice, patience, and commitment, but the rewards, in terms of safety, confidence, and quality of life, are immeasurable. Remember, walking safely isn't about walking carefully. It's about walking skillfully. Master these 7 secrets, practice them consistently, and give yourself the gift of confident, joyful movement for all the years ahead. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And remember, every step you take with intention, is a step toward a safer, more confident future.